Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we're going to just practice the idea of the tapping method that's very popular with painters like Bob Ross. So Bob Ross would use these kinds of bristle brush, like these very bushly kind of brushes, and you can get these for so cheap. I highly recommend having one on deck because they're just so fun to use for this technique that we're going to go over really quick. But if all you have on hand is just a basic flat brush or something like that, so maybe all you have is just a regular flat paintbrush, that's okay too. We can still use that, no problem. And we will get started. So now if I'm painting a tree, for example, and I want to create foliage, or maybe I want to have some bushes or something and I want to do this tapping, I want to take ideally this kind of a brush because the bristles are super pulled apart. And getting the paint on the tip of this is what creates the illusion of lots of little brush strokes when you tap the corner, or you can tap it full on. Now, when you're using this kind of a brush, you need to create that distress in the bristles. So you have to kind of bushel the brush out and pull the tips apart to create a similar effect. Now, it's not going to be the same because it's a completely different paintbrush, but it's going to get you more towards that idea. So let's practice with the regular brush first, just in case that's all you have. And we'll use our black. Now, what you don't want to do, because I see this happen a lot, is that people will get a lot of paint on their brush, and then it's just a big gob. And when they go to do it, it's just like a big gob of paint, not necessarily textured. So what you can do is tap out the excess paint. And then when you look at your bristles, you should be able to see gaps between the bristles. And then when you go to tap, you're actually going to get texture instead of this giant gob of paint, which is what you want to get. And then the other thing I see people do a lot when I'm teaching in person is that when they're doing this method, like say they load the brush like this, they've got texture, so they're good there. But then what they do is they add they don't move the brush around. They just go in the same direction. So they end up getting this very uniform look. Now, I don't recommend that, especially if you're using like a square brush like this. You want to tap the corner and then maybe tap the other corner and then move the brush around and roll it around to create some different looks. You can do it like this sometimes, but then you want to tilt it and just get the corner. You know, you want to create some more variety because otherwise it's going to look really weird. Now with a bush or something, you want to make the bush a little denser at first, and then as you come out to the edges, you're twisting and turning and getting like smaller little nuanced brush strokes, and the brush strokes get more pulled apart as you get further away from the center of the object. So say the bush is like dense in the middle, and then the edges get a little more spread out, or even a tuft in a tree or something like that is going to do this kind of thing. And then again, twist and move the brush around. I'm not just going like this repetitively in this exact same way. You're going to move the brush around to get some more variety, make it look a little more organic and natural. So it can be more dense in some spots, more pulled apart in others, and it's going to look more natural. Now, if you want more precision, you can use a smaller brush to do the same kind of thing. I'm just going to use some of this paint here because there's so much gobbed on right there. You're just doing a smaller brush, the same kind of idea. So maybe you want to get some more little specific little things there, and you can use the corner of a smaller brush to add some touches or details to whatever you're tapping in, whether it's a tree or a bush or whatever. Or even sometimes you could use this to do splashing water. So this technique is really fun for a lot of things. Now, ideally, it's like a little easier to get more in. So if you have a painting with a lot of this technique, using these kinds of brushes is better. Now you can use different sizes. You can have some smaller ones and some larger ones. This one's like a 1 inch, so it's a medium, but you're just tapping the corner with that whatever color you're using. I'm just using black for simplicity's sake here. And then you're just tapping. And again, but with this, you're still moving it around a bit. And you can even kind of shape and squeeze the bristles to do what you want with this kind of brush, which I like doing because it's fun. But mainly this is just going to give you a little bit more coverage a little quicker because you have such a bigger bushel of bristles there. to get you going. And then just still turning the brush and doing different things with it to create some variety in the tapping motion. So if you notice it gets too redundant, add some more paint, switch it around, switch the part of the brush you're using, switch the way you're holding it, and try to get something a little different, or just to create more of an organic feel. So tap, tap, tap. So much fun. Lots of different applications for this kind of technique, but practice. Just get a couple different brushes, get some paint on there, do some tapping. Again, try to avoid the redundancy because then it just ends up looking like a little pattern. You want to move it around and create something a little more organic. But the more you practice doing this, and even just finding one brush that you really like to do it with and sticking with that and practicing with that over and over again, it's like you create a relationship with your paintbrushes, especially with these kinds of techniques. You know that if you turn it just a little bit this way, you're going to get this texture that you want. But if you're not familiar with what you're using, or you're not practicing at all, you're not really sure what's going to happen when you do it. So you have to do it, practice, move it around, see what works. Maybe you don't like it, try something else, find something that works, and then practice with that over and over again until you create a really good relationship with your muscle memory and what you know is going to happen when you do what. And that's how you get good at it. It's not like magical, I just grab the brush and magically I can do it. It's because I've done it a lot, and I've tried a lot of different brushes. And then I kind of go, oh, okay, this brush is going to do this. This brush will do that. And I kind of have to do this when I use this one. And you just figure it out. But again, you got to just practice. So it's a very false idea to think that you're just going to pick up a brush, watch somebody do it once, and you're going to be able to do the exact same thing. And then if you don't, you feel like a failure, or you feel like you're not good at painting. That's totally not true, because the person you're watching probably took a while, a lot of failure, a lot of like, whoa, that didn't work out, a lot of blobs of paint, a lot of weird repetitive patterns and things that didn't work until they got the idea of like, oh, okay, I got to do this. So hopefully this helps get you there a little bit quicker. That's the idea. However, you still have to practice. There's no cheating. You can't cheat. You can't like get around that. But I want to encourage you, like, you'll get there if you just, practice, know what you want to see, experiment a little bit when there's not very much at stake. Just use a piece of scrap paper, use an old piece of cardboard to practice on. You don't even have to waste any materials, but just a little bit of paint to see what happens. That's it. And you're good. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on the tapping, the classic Bob Ross tapping method. And again, you could be using different colors, layering different shades to build up. And I'm not doing that here. I'm just showing you the actual motion and brushes that are good for it. And that's it. So have a beautiful day. Thank you again for watching, and stay creative. Bye.